I became a city bus driver 3 weeks ago. Most night routes were quiet. A few late workers, college students, people trying to get home. Then my supervisor handed me a route nobody else wanted. Route 47B. Before I left the depot, he gave me one warning. If you see someone waiting where there isn't a bus stop, don't pick them up. I laughed. Nobody else did. At 11:47 p.m., I started the route. By midnight, I was carrying passengers that didn't appear on any camera inside the bus, and every one of them was waiting in places where nobody should have been. The depot always sounded different at night. During the day, it was all engines, horns, air brakes, drivers shouting across lanes, mechanics dragging tools over concrete. But after 11, the whole place went hollow. The buses sat in long, dark rows under fluorescent lights, their windshields black, their destination signs dead. Rain tapped against the metal roof and ran down the garage doors in crooked lines. I was checking my mirrors when Carl, the night supervisor, stepped out of the office. He had a clipboard in one hand. He looked like he didn't want to be holding it. "Evan," he said, "need you to cover one more run." I glanced at the clock. 11:29 p.m. My shift ended 10 minutes ago. I know. He didn't smile. That was the first thing that bothered me. Carl always smiled, even when he was telling someone they had to work overtime. He handed me the sheet. At the top, in block letters, it said, Route 47B, Riverside, night route, 11:47 p.m. to 4:13 a.m. I stared at it. I've never seen this route. You wouldn't have. Is it new? Carl looked past me toward the garage. 3 other drivers were standing near the vending machines. The second they noticed the route sheet in my hand, they stopped talking. One of them shook his head and walked away. Carl lowered his voice. Just follow the schedule. Don't improvise. I laughed a little because I thought he was messing with me. Nobody else laughed. He stepped closer. If someone is waiting at a stop that isn't on your route, don't pick them up. I looked down at the paper again. There were only 11 stops listed. Most of them were in older parts of town I barely knew. Why would someone be waiting where there isn't a stop? Carl's eyes stayed on mine. Exactly. Then he reached into his jacket pocket and handed me a small key. It wasn't for the bus. It was old brass, dark with age. What's this? You'll know if you need it. That was all he said. Bus 7421 was parked near the far bay door, engine already running. Its destination sign glowed amber through the rain. 47B, Riverside, night route. I climbed inside, adjusted the seat, checked the dash, and tried to convince myself everyone was just being dramatic. At 11:47 exactly, I pulled out of the depot. The first part of the route was normal. Wet streets, closed storefronts, a man in a work jacket waiting under the shelter on 3rd, 2 college kids near a laundromat, both half asleep, an older woman with grocery bags who thanked me without looking up. Normal people, normal stops. By 12:06, they had all gotten off. The bus was empty. That made me feel better. Then the route display flickered. The GPS beeped once. Next stop, Crossing Road. I frowned. Crossing Road wasn't on the sheet. I slowed instinctively, checking the curb. There was no shelter, no bench, no bus sign, just a narrow road disappearing between 2 rows of dead trees. I kept driving. Then I saw him. A man stood beneath a broken streetlight on the right side of the road. Perfectly still. No umbrella, no movement. Just standing there in the rain with one hand raised. My foot hovered over the brake. Carl's warning came back to me. Don't pick them up. The man's face turned as the bus approached. I couldn't see his features, only the pale oval of his face following me through the windshield. I drove past. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then every interior light inside the bus flickered. The radio cracked, and a voice whispered through the speaker. Not dispatch, not Carl. A dry, close voice. "You missed one." I nearly stopped the bus. The whisper had sounded close. Too close. Like somebody had been standing directly behind my seat. I grabbed the radio microphone. "Dispatch?" Static. I tried again. Nothing. The road ahead remained empty except for rain and streetlights. Eventually, I convinced myself to keep driving. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe I was tired. The next few stops were normal. A woman heading home from work, a man carrying a backpack, an older guy in a reflective construction jacket. Regular passengers. People you'd expect to see riding a city bus after midnight. By 12:20 a.m., the bus held 7 riders. The strange voice already felt less frightening. Then the GPS chimed. Next stop, Blackwood Church. I frowned immediately. The stop wasn't on my route sheet. I checked it twice. Still wasn't there. Ahead, the road curved past an abandoned church that had been closed for years. Boarded windows, collapsed steeple, empty parking lot, except tonight. It wasn't empty. Someone stood waiting near the entrance. A woman, motionless. Rain poured over her dark coat. I remembered Carl's warning. If someone is waiting where there isn't a stop, don't pick them up. So I kept driving. The bus rolled past. The woman never moved, never waved, never reacted. She simply watched the bus pass. For a moment I felt relieved. Then a soft chime sounded behind me. The kind passengers trigger when requesting a stop. I glanced into the mirror. Every passenger on the bus was looking forward, perfectly still. Nobody had touched the stop request button. The chime sounded again. Ding! My eyes moved toward the dashboard. A new stop appeared on the display. Blackwood Church, requested. My stomach tightened. I checked the mirror again. The passengers hadn't moved, not one of them. Then something caught my attention. An empty seat near the back. I was certain someone had been sitting there earlier. The older construction worker. I hadn't seen him leave, had I? Trying to remember made my head hurt. I pulled away from the church and continued the route. A few minutes later, another unofficial stop appeared. Rivergate. Someone waited there too. A man in an old dark suit, standing beneath a broken traffic light. Again, I drove past. Again, the stop request chime sounded. Ding! I checked the mirror. Every passenger remained silent, motionless, watching the darkness outside. And for the first time all night, I started wondering if Carl's warning hadn't been meant for me. Maybe it had been meant for whatever was trying to get on the bus. By 1:20 a.m., I was seriously considering turning the bus around. The route no longer made sense. Half the stops appearing on the GPS weren't listed on my schedule. People kept waiting in places where nobody should have been, and somehow passengers seemed to disappear without ever getting off. I picked up the radio again. Dispatch, this is bus 7421. I need someone to answer. Static. Nothing else. The bus rolled through a stretch of empty road lined with warehouses and chain-link fences. Not a single car passed. Not a single building had lights on. I checked the mirror. 5 passengers remained. The young woman in the brown coat, the man with the backpack, 2 others I didn't recognize, and a pale, elderly man sitting near the rear. I couldn't remember when he'd boarded. That realization made my stomach twist. I was the driver. I was supposed to know who got on my bus. Yet I couldn't remember seeing him. A soft notification chimed from the dashboard, the interior camera system. I glanced at the monitor mounted beside my seat, then froze. The screen showed an empty bus. Every row, every seat. Empty. For a second, I thought the camera had malfunctioned. I looked over my shoulder. Passengers. I looked back at the monitor. Empty seats. No people. No movement. Nothing. My pulse exploded. I switched camera angles. Front camera, middle camera, rear camera. All three showed the same thing. An empty bus traveling through the night. I looked into the mirror again. 5 passengers stared ahead in silence. My hands began to shake. The bus hit a pothole. The monitor flickered. For just an instant, a 6th passenger appeared on the rear camera. A dark silhouette standing in the aisle. Then the image cleared. Gone. I nearly slammed on the brakes. Instead, I forced myself to keep driving. There had to be an explanation, a wiring issue, a software problem, anything. Another chime interrupted my thoughts. Next stop, Cemetery Gate. The road narrowed ahead. Fog drifted across the pavement, and waiting beside an iron cemetery entrance stood 3 figures. A man, a woman, a child. All perfectly still. The bus slowed automatically. I pressed the accelerator. The engine responded, but the bus didn't speed up. It kept slowing. My heart started pounding. No. The brakes hissed softly. The bus rolled toward the curb. No, no, no! The doors opened, by themselves. Rain blew into the front steps. The 3 figures climbed aboard. None of them looked at me. None of them spoke. They simply paid their fare using small metal tokens and walked down the aisle. The child carried something against his chest. A stuffed rabbit, yellowed with age. The doors closed. The bus pulled away. I stared into the mirror. Now 8 passengers occupied the bus. Every one of them sat perfectly upright, perfectly still. Not a single person checked a phone. Not a single person spoke. The child sat near the rear beside the elderly man. The rabbit never moved. Neither did he. Then the elderly man slowly turned his head, not toward me, toward the child. The child looked back. For a brief second, both of them smiled. A cold chill crawled up my spine. The GPS chimed again. Next stop, Hollow Bridge. Not a road, not an address, just a name. Outside, the city was completely gone now. No businesses, no houses, no streetlights. Only darkness and trees. Rain tapped steadily against the windshield. The passengers sat silently behind me, and for the first time all night, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Every ticket transfer stub hanging from the fare box had a date printed on it. Passengers sometimes dropped them there by accident. I glanced at the newest one, then another, then another. None were from tonight. One was dated 1987, another 1974, another 1959. My hands tightened around the wheel, because every date matched the approximate age of someone sitting behind me. And suddenly I wasn't wondering where these passengers came from. I was wondering when. By 1:45 a.m., I had stopped looking for logical explanations. The camera system showed an empty bus. The mirrors showed passengers. The route had left the city nearly 20 minutes ago. And somehow I was still following directions from a GPS that no longer displayed roads I recognized. The rain finally stopped. That should have made me feel better. Instead, it made everything worse. The silence outside felt unnatural. No traffic, no animals, no wind, just darkness pressing against the windows. The GPS chimed. Next stop, Hollow Bridge. The same stop from earlier, only this time it wasn't disappearing. The bus was actually taking me there. A narrow bridge emerged through the fog ahead. Old steel beams, rust, no streetlights, no signs. The structure looked abandoned. As I approached, I noticed people standing along both sides, dozens of them, perfectly still, watching the bus pass. None tried to board, none moved. They simply stood in silence beneath the fog. I drove across as quickly as I could. The passengers behind me remained motionless. Then something happened. The elderly man near the rear stood up. My stomach dropped. He was the first passenger I'd seen move in over an hour. Slowly, he walked down the aisle, not toward the front, toward the child holding the rabbit. Every passenger watched him pass. The old man stopped beside the child's seat. The child looked up. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then the old man smiled. The child smiled back, and the rabbit fell from the child's hands. It hit the floor with a soft thump. The old man picked it up. As he handed it back, I saw something stitched into one of the rabbit's worn ears. A date, 1986. The child hugged the rabbit tightly. The old man returned to his seat. The bus became silent once again. A minute later, the GPS chimed. Next stop, Last Light Road. I stared at the display. The name sent a chill through me. Then a voice spoke, not through the radio, inside the bus. A woman's voice, soft, calm. You're doing fine. I nearly swerved. The voice had come from the young woman in the brown coat. She was still facing forward, still staring out the window. Yet I knew she had spoken. I checked the mirror. Every passenger was looking at me now, every single one. The woman spoke again. You were supposed to be here. My mouth felt dry. What is this route? No answer. The passengers continued staring. Then the elderly man answered from the rear. The last one. A cold wave ran through my body. The bus rolled onward. Fog thickened outside. Soon I could barely see beyond the headlights. The GPS displayed only one remaining stop. No distance. No arrival time. Just a name. The Crossing. The route sheet Carl had given me slid off the dashboard and landed beside my foot. I glanced down. Something had changed. At the bottom of the page, beneath the printed stops, new writing appeared. Writing that hadn't been there before. A handwritten note. Only 3 words. Final driver assignment. My blood ran cold. I remembered the old brass key Carl had given me before I left. The key was still in my jacket pocket. Suddenly it felt much heavier than it should have. The passengers continued watching me, not threatening, not angry, almost expectant, like they were waiting for me to understand something. The fog ahead began to glow, not from headlights, not from buildings. A pale white light spread across the road beyond the trees. The GPS chimed one final time. Arriving at destination. And through the windshield, I finally saw what waited at the end of Route 47B. A massive bridge stretching into the fog, and hundreds of silent figures standing on the other side. The bridge stretched into a wall of glowing fog. I couldn't see the end. Hundreds of figures stood beyond its entrance, waiting. The GPS screen flickered once, then went dark. Only 3 words remained. End of route. My heart pounded. Behind me, every passenger stood at the same time. I looked into the mirror. The elderly man, the woman from the church, the child holding the rabbit, all facing forward, all waiting. The bus rolled to a stop. Its doors opened by themselves. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then the elderly man stepped into the aisle. The others followed. One by one, they passed my seat, and as they did, I realized something. They weren't frightening anymore. They looked tired, like travelers finally reaching their destination. The child was the first to leave, the rabbit tucked beneath his arm, then the woman, then the others. Soon, only the elderly man remained. He stopped beside me. The last driver never left. I stared at him. What happened to him? The old man looked toward the bridge. He chose to stay. Then he stepped off the bus and vanished into the fog. Silence filled the cabin. For the first time all night, I was alone. Then I heard a metallic click. Near the rear exit, a small compartment door hung open. A brass keyhole sat beneath it. The same brass key Carl had given me fit perfectly. Inside was a stack of transit badges. Driver badges. Dozens of them, each belonging to someone assigned to Route 47B. At the bottom sat a blank badge. No name, no photograph. Waiting. A cold realization settled over me. The route wasn't for the passengers. It was for the drivers. Every driver eventually reached the crossing. Every driver faced the same choice. Stay or leave. Outside, the crowd continued disappearing into the fog. The bridge was emptying. The route was ending. I looked at the blank badge, then at the road behind me. For the first time all night, I could see a normal highway leading home. The decision took less than a second. I dropped the blank badge onto the driver's seat and stepped off the bus. The moment my feet touched the pavement, the engine started. I spun around. The bus sat empty. No driver, no passengers. Yet it slowly pulled away from the curb. The destination sign glowed through the fog. 47B, Riverside Night Route. The doors closed. The bus crossed the bridge alone and vanished into the white glow. The next morning, I returned to the depot. Carl was waiting. I placed the brass key on his desk. He looked at it and nodded. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then I asked the only question that mattered. How long has Route 47B been running? Carl stared out toward the bus yard. His expression became distant, almost uneasy. Finally, he answered, "Longer than anyone remembers." I never drove nights again. But every so often, usually just after midnight, I'll catch a glimpse of a city bus in the distance. No route number, no driver visible, just headlights disappearing into the fog. And somewhere behind those windows, passengers quietly making their way to the crossing. And that's where I'm ending tonight's story. If you were sitting behind that wheel and Route 47B appeared on your schedule, would you have finished the route? Or turned that bus around the second things stopped making sense? Let me know down in the comments. And if you enjoy creepy stories about strange jobs, unexplained mysteries, and things that should never exist after dark, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Every week, we take another trip into places most people would never dare go. Until next time, stay safe, stay alert, and if you ever see a city bus driving through the fog long after midnight, you might want to check who's sitting inside before you get on.